Chapter 17, Section 3, Natural Selection. Learning objectives. Describe the conditions for natural selection. Explain what evolutionary theory suggests about the unity and diversity of life. Darwin worked out the main elements of evolution by natural selection soon after reading Malthus's research and thinking about artificial selection. His scientific friends urged him to publish his brilliant arguments. Darwin did write up a complete draft of his ideas, but he put the work aside and didn't publish it for another 20 years. Darwin knew that many scientists, including some of his own teachers, ridiculed Lamarck's ideas. Darwin's theory was even more radical, so he wanted to gather as much evidence as he could to support his ideas before he made them public. Darwin's contribution was to describe a natural process, a scientific mechanism that could operate like artificial selection. In An Origin of Species, he supported his ideas with arguments from Malthus and Lamarck. Malthus's work had convinced Darwin that since all populations have the potential to produce more offspring that can survive, members of the population will compete for finite supply of environmental resources. Darwin described this competition as the struggle for existence, but which individuals would succeed in surviving and reproducing. Darwin hypothesized that individuals with certain types of inherited variation are better suited or adapted to life in their environment than other individuals. Any heritable characteristic that increases an organism's ability to survive and reproduce in its own environment is called adaptation. Adaptations can involve body parts or structures like tiger's claws. Adaptations can involve colors, like those that make camouflage possible. Darwin, like Lamarck, recognized that there must be a connection between the way an organism makes a living, so to speak, and the environment in which it lives. According to Darwin, differences in adaptations affect the individual's fitness. Fitness describes how well an organism can survive and reproduce in its own environment. Individuals with adaptations that are well suited to their environment can survive and reproduce and are said to have high fitness. Individuals with characteristics that are not well suited to their environment either die without reproducing or leave relatively few offspring and are said to have low fitness. This results in differentiated reproductive success, or as some call it, survival of the fittest. Darwin named his mechanism for evolution natural selection. Natural selection is the process by which organisms in nature with various variations most suited to their local environment survive and leave more offspring. In both artificial and natural selection, only certain individuals reproduce offspring. But in natural selection, the environment, not a farmer or animal breeder, influences fitness. Natural selection occurs in any situation in which more individuals are born than can survive, the struggle for existence. Natural heritable variation affects the ability to survive and reproduce, variation and adaptation. And fitness varies among individuals, differentiated reproductive success. In this picture, you'll see different grasshopper populations that have green or yellow coats. Hungry birds can easily spot the yellow grasshoppers, while the green grasshoppers blend into their surroundings, so more of them survive and reproduce. Over time, green grasshoppers become more common. Yellow grasshoppers, which are more likely to be eaten by birds, are less likely to pass their genes onto the next generation. Natural selection depends on individuals' ability to reproduce and leave descendants. Every organism alive is descended from parents who survive and reproduced. Those parents descended from their parents, and so forth, back in time. Just as well-adapted individuals in species survive and reproduce, well-adapted species survive over time. Darwin proposed that living species are descended with changes over time from common ancestors. an idea called descent with modification. Darwin's ideas that natural selection and adaptation can produce new species offered an explanation for both the unity and diversity of life. Darwin sketched his thoughts about descended from common ancestors in a form of a branching tree. As shown in this picture on this slide, all the finches of the Galapagos Islands descend from a common ancestor. Darwin was the first to use a tree-like model to represent common descent. The very first organism from the base of the tree and their descendants form a trunk and branches. According to the principle of common descent, all species, living and extinct, are united by descent from ancient common ancestors, and exhibit diversity due to natural selection and adaptation.